I know you live in the Show Me State, okay, and you you're kind of like me, Well, show me, show me what you're talking about. But whenever it comes to these guns, they never should have been the military style guns. Never should have been given to the general public to begin with.
Right.
And I don't know if you remember or not, but back whenever the deal happened with the Waco deal down in Texas, the 51-day siege, okay? You know what that was really all about if you really get to studying it?
What?
That was about a group of ATF high school agents, young boys, that wanted to dress themselves up and act like that they was going to college right across from the compound. And they basically surveyed them for about 8 or 9 months. And they knew that it was a group of people that was basically a bunch of doomsday preppers, okay, concerned about the end of the world fixing to happen. So they was, bringing in a lot of supplies, water, food, etc., dry food. But they was also doing a lot of target practice. And they got to talking to them, and the next thing you know, they found out that they was very, very interested in some high compound magazine guns. And basically what they done, they set them up in selling them the same type of guns pertaining to the Fast and Furious across the Mexican border.
Yeah.
They sold them guns to them Davidians, and there was some sort of special clause in that particular gun that required for you to pay an extra tax on internal. They got the no-knock warrant because of tax invasion. They didn't have no idea that all that other hanky-panky stuff was going on in there. The only thing they knowed is that they had a group of people that was basically doomsday preppers that they themselves had sold the guns to, basically preying on weak-minded people, and now they're going to turn around and bust them for it.
Yeah.
Well, guess what happened that day whenever the raid happened? Somebody let the cat out of the bag, and the Davidians knew that they was coming, and they was laying wait for them. So, in other words, whenever the 3 helicopters landed in the front yard, the warrant never made it to the front door. It was a freaking knockdown drag out, and I think 2 or 3 agents got killed, 2 or 3 of the Davidians got killed. David Koresh got hit real bad in the stomach, you know what I'm saying? And that's what started that 51-day standoff. But my point is this: in a lot of states, entrapment techniques are against the law.
Yeah.
Because if you really think about it, would they have really bought those type of artillery military style guns if the ATF didn't sell them to them to begin with? I know they wanted them, okay, and you can always go out there probably online and get the generic stuff, but this was the real deal. This was the very thing that the military uses, and you know as well as I do, those type of guns, whenever they're designed to kill.
Oh, yeah. That they are.
I'm talking about if it hits you in the shoulder, it's going to knock your whole freaking shoulder out. It's going to knock your whole freaking arm off. And they said that them children down there in Texas was unrecognizable. And it was the exact same thing that happened up there in Sandy Hook, the way I understand it, that it was just a gory scene.
Yeah.
And ain't that crazy that they hadn't addressed that until now? And I feel like that they ought to be freaking suing these manufacturers, because I guarantee you, people that get killed in car accidents because the airbag didn't go off, or because they felt like that this didn't happen or that didn't happen. They have freaking arguments all the time in courtrooms pertaining to suing the manufacturer that designed the car that something didn't happen on the car, the safety feature that caused the life of somebody to die.
Yeah.
They sue them all the time, every day. Matter of fact, it got to the point in my industry that I thought for a while that I was going to have to be bonded, kind of like a doctor or a police officer that gets bonded. That way, if I do get into a major lawsuit and you get some sort of a crackpot attorney and a crackpot judge, and the next thing you know, on my repair, they said, well, it was your fault that these people died. Well, you know what that would do to me? First of all, it completely ruined my reputation towards being an auto body technician. But secondly, they would clamp on my life to the point no matter where I work, who I work for, they would deduct a certain amount of money out of my check the rest of my life
Yep.
for that lawsuit. I knew a guy up there in Nashville, he'd only worked for a company for about 90 days. And he was an excellent freaking body man, and I got to talking to him one day. I said, "Man, how come you jump around so much?" He said, "Because I had a lawsuit up in Nashville, and they deemed it my fault, and I got to pay back something like, it was an ungodly amount. It was something like $500,000.
Mm.
And he said that they have put an injunction on my check, and no matter where I go, they clamp down on it. He said it usually takes about 90 days before they figure out where I'm working. I guess it takes that long for the paperwork to get shuffled around. That way the Internal Revenue Service, a red flag comes up. Well, here he is. He's over here working now.
Yep.
There he is. He's over there working. It takes about 90 days for the paperwork to finally get processed. But you understand my line of thinking. I mean, if the car industry, and I realize the car does not kill a person. The automobile itself does not kill another human being. It's the safety features, and it's the lack of judgment pertaining to people that, and they claim like 7 out of 10 is because of speed, which I don't doubt that neither. But if that automobile does not perform the way it's supposed to perform in its safety feature design, that just automatically throws up grounds for a lawsuit. You got ambulance chasers all everywhere.
Oh, I know.
Everywhere.
Yep.
And I guarantee you, once this lawsuit gets found out about, they'll be attacking the gun industry, and they should have done it, as far as I'm concerned, 20 years ago.
Yep.
Towards making their product safer, making their product to the point that if somebody did get that gun in their hands and they wasn't supposed to have that gun, after going through a complete total gun check, don't get me wrong, I'm all for people having guns.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you're qualified to have the gun.
Yeah.
As long as you meet the requirements. That's kind of like, I don't have a problem in immigrants coming over here and bettering their lives, as long as you do it the way that you're supposed to do it. Legally. Yep. I don't have a problem at all coming over here and starting a business or whatever. It don't matter if you're from India or Africa or China or wherever. I mean, if you want to come over here and you want to do it legally, hey, more power to you, right?
Yes. Yep.
But now I don't agree with people coming over here illegally and crossing the border.
No, but Democrats sure do.
Boy, there's something going on there, ain't it?
Yep.
Anyways, let me tell you a little bit about the story, since you already know about the tornado damage up here in LBL. And in the mid to late 1980s, after I become a teenager and I went through a couple bad hardships towards injuries, I was intrigued about this area. In other words, I was spiritually led to come up here and start a project that I had no earthly idea towards the depth of it, towards where it was going to lead. But in 1988, LBL, which is, something like 185,000 acres or something like that. It's unbelievable, because part of it's in Tennessee and part of it's in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I come up here off by Sugar Bay and built an altar out of a bunch of rocks that was basically wood that it went through its, it's been seasoned and penetrated. You know how wood can actually turn into stone?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got a petrified rock.
Right. So I took a bunch of petrified rocks and I made this big circle, probably every bit as big around as your 10 is right there from point to point, but except it was round. And I put a big rock in the middle of it. I found a big rock, and I placed the sword on that rock, and I went to fasting and praying, and sometimes I would fast for 7 days, and I'd have to go and eat me a meal. Sometimes I'd fast for 12 days, and I'd have to go eat me a meal. I was like 145 pounds doing this, and look at where I'm at today. You know what I'm saying? 340 pounds. So I've gained 200 pounds since then. But I started my church retreat up here in 1988, and at the time, whenever I come up here, the Federal National Forest Service was not in control of LBL. The people that was in control of LBL was TVA. See, TVA owns everything or is in full authority, everything on the Tennessee, Kentucky, Tennessee River. And of course, there's like 42 dams on the Tennessee River that starts, basically this is the starting point or ending point, whichever way you want to look at it, and it goes all the way down to Huntsville, Alabama, and it goes down in almost into Georgia, and then it shoots back up through Chattanooga, and it goes all the way up towards past Knoxville, and it goes all the way up in the mountains up there, in the Appalachian Mountains up there. So it's a big river.
Yep.
A matter of fact, the Tennessee River is one of the few rivers that flows north, which is supposed to be contrary to the gravity, because most rivers go south.
Yep.
But because the volume of the river is so big that it has basically done that, which that in and of itself is a marvel, I think, because everything coming from Huntsville, Alabama, Muscle Shoals, Pickwick, is all flowing north. Basically, the whole distance of the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Well, that was in 1988. I went up here and I stayed for 40 days and 40 nights. And then I started my church retreat, and I had a bunch of problems with their internal services pertaining to Homeland Security, FBI. They was really dogging me out towards trying to ruin my life, because I was actually part of something that occurred in Ronald Reagan's administration in 1988. I come up here in 1989. But in the year 2000, it changed, and I didn't know it changed. It changed from TVA no longer operating it and being in control of LBL to now the National Forest Service. It turned into a regular a national park. Well, because I didn't know that, and because I'd had so many problems, in 2007, I decided, because the sword had been confiscated from the ministry, I decided to come back up here and go through the same ceremony of fasting and praying for a different sword, okay, to be anointed by God, pertaining to the sword symbolizing peace on earth that it speaks of in the book of Revelation, chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. What we're dealing with here is prophecy. And I can tell that you're a man of God and you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell that because I can sense your spirit. But I also seen you looking on my hood and checking out a couple of those things that was on my vehicle.
Those are pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah. So I come up here and I go to, well, the first thing I done, I had aggression that basically put me on the radar, because I let my dad know, at the time he was still living, I let my dad know that I was coming back up here to do the same thing again, because he was very, very familiar with my story. And as soon as I let him know and I hung up the phone, and I'm on my way back up here to Sugar Bay, he gets on the phone somehow or another and contacts these Kentucky authorities and tells them that my son is on his way up to Land Between the Lakes. He's on a suicide by cop mission. Stop him at all cost. Well, he's like 70 years old. Why in the world he come up with that idea, I don't know, other than just being by the devil. But as soon as I got up here, just on the other side of that bridge right there, once you get into LBL and you go up there where the welcoming station is up there, where law enforcement is, if you'll turn right instead of left, go down south maybe about a half a mile, there's another entry that goes to the left that takes you to Wrangler's Campground, where all the cowboys go. Have you ever been down in there? Well, that's where I was driving around that day that I entered into LBL. I was just checking some things out, getting reacquainted with the area, because it's been several years since I've been up here. And because they had got that call, I got pulled over by 4 federal national forest services, and they apprehended me real quick and set me on a bank and went to going through my automobile piece by piece by piece. And I guess what they was looking for was a firearm. Fortunately, I didn't have one, because if I did, then that could have led into, questioning me towards whether or not I really was on a cop by suicide mission.
Yeah.
Well, once they identified after about 3 hours in front of Wrangler's Campground where all the cowboys are, once they identified after 3 hours that I wasn't going to hurt or harm myself, I went ahead and went up into that area where I'd made that sacred site, and I went to praying and fasting again, praying for peace and praying for a revival. Well, I didn't know, like I told you a while ago, I didn't know that the powers had changed hands, and they had come up with a new rule in LBL that you could not camp no longer than 21 days at a campsite, and after the 21st day, on the 22nd day, you had to pack up all your stuff, and you had to leave that campsite, and you had to leave for at least a mile. You had to go at least a mile away, and you had to stay at least 7 days before you could come back to the original campsite.
Wow.
Yeah. In other words, they didn't want nobody coming up here homesteading.
Right.
And I found out later that they still had homesteading laws up there in Frankfort, Kentucky, and they was really paranoid that somebody was going to come up here and try to homestead a certain area up here, because I don't know if you know much about LBL, but these people went through hell, man. They went through hell whenever TVA first built the bridge, the dam over here beginning in the late 20s, and I guess long about 36, something like that, is whenever they started flooding. And my God, they run communities out down there in the valleys and towns and churches and schools. There's one whole town. If you go up this road right here and go to the right, go through Aurora and go to the right, about another 10 miles, there's one whole town over there called Alabama, that the whole town's under the water.
Wow.
Yeah. All you got to do is look the research up and look at it. They got all kind of literature about it. Well, at that time, whenever I first come up here in '88, I didn't know nothing about all that. All I knew was that they'd been hoodooed whenever the dam first started flooding the valley. The TVA basically had a green light by Congress, and they was buying people's property out at that time for about $17 an acre. And basically, they was just stealing people's ground.
Yeah.
They desecrated a bunch of communities, not just here, but all the way through. If you look at what they done up in the hills of the Appalachian Mountains, there was lots of sacred Indian ground up there, burial grounds and stuff like that they just flooded. They didn't try to get in there and go and moving the grave sites, moving the bones around. They just flooded them. So I found out a lot about this area, and not only did they go through that rigmarole, but they also went through a rigmarole whenever the Cumberland River, whenever they put a dam on it. So now their peninsula, it shrunk this way, and now their peninsula has shrunk this way. So their peninsula that they're on got very, very small. In other words, they had to move twice. Some of them did, because of this flooding, and then a few years later than this flooding. And then along about 1963, Kennedy flew over the property in his little private airplane and said, you know what, let's just deem it as a wildlife refuge and make everybody get off the freaking peninsula. So that sure enough pissed off a bunch of people.
Oh, yeah.
Because at one time, this area used to be predominant towards one of the biggest moonshining industries in America. And of course, if you know anything at all about the Kennedys, what made the Kennedys famous? Alcohol, rum, moonshine. That's how they got their start. So whenever Bobby Kennedy become what do they call it? Up underneath the president.
Wasn't he a senator?
No, he wasn't a senator. He was something else. But anyways, whenever he become that type of power, they started going around and they started busting freaking people. They started shutting people down. And whenever they shut them down here in LBL, that was the wrong thing to do, because they had a predominant business in Indianapolis, Indiana, running moonshine back and forth. They had a predominant business up in Chicago. This was right after Al Capone during what did they call it? Prohibition days.
Yeah.
And they had a big business here. A matter of fact, it was big enough that whenever a revenuer would come down in here and get to looking for steals, he would disappear. They would lose sometimes 7, 8, 10 revenuers a year, because them revenuers would come up on that steal, and you know what would happen to those revenuers? They got knocked in the head, and their bodies got dropped down there in the bottom in the river somewhere. Yeah. So it wasn't nothing for the state of Kentucky to be losing revenuers over alcohol, over moonshine. Well, I found out that it's a strong, strong possibility that the reason why Kennedy got assassinated was because of that very act, because he done this up here in LBL, and less than 30 days he was dead. This was one of his main things that he done, one of them, before he actually got assassinated. And to this day, a lot of these people around here, they've got ill will feelings about how that their ancestors got beat out of all the property and basically didn't get no money for it. Now they did put a clause in the final deal, because I mean they basically had war up here. There was people getting killed up here over that. You know, you're going to move me away from my home, and this is where my grandmother, my great grandmother lived. You know, that's the reason why they got, what is it, something like 350 cemeteries up here? Unbelievable. I mean, there was a whole grove of people up here, a whole colony. So whenever they finally got everybody off, that's whenever they turned it into a wildlife refuge thing. Well, I had no idea that these people had already been agitated pertaining to the authorities up here several different times. We're talking about groups of people that would get together, 25, 30, 40, 50 people, and they'd have basically outdoor court pertaining to what that they was doing and how that they was doing it, because they was very brutal. A woman picking a freaking a yellow flower would get fined $500, or you drop a freaking a gum wrapper on the ground, you get charged like $250, because it's now all federal up here. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? It's all federal. Well, in the meantime, I find out that there was an agreement, and in the agreement that if the government, this is all government owned, TVA, that's all government. It owns all these dams and all these, they own I think it's like 30 yards inland. They own everything on the water. Now, Corps of Engineers operates that river over there, the Cumberland River. TVA operates this one. Yep. Big difference. There was an agreement that if they ever did decide to put the ground back public again, the first options was that anybody that was associated with LBL, they had first grabs of the property whenever it went up for sale. Well, you know good and well that this property that's on these river banks, some of this stuff would, just the lot itself, a 5-acre lot would probably bring $250,000 or more.
Oh, yeah.
Just a bare lot. And there's doctors and lawyers and football players and business people that would give it in a heartbeat. You know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. So if it ever did get back open for the public, well, these people wouldn't be able to afford it anyway.
Oh, we couldn't afford it.
No. The only people going to be able to afford stuff like that's the crooks, the lawyers, the doctors, the football players. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So what they have been doing, they have been waiting for a certain generation after generation after generation to die out. And the scheme of the matter was that, yes, TVA was going to turn it back over to public property, but all the proceeds was going to go to the government. In other words, the state of Kentucky was looking at this towards it being a predominant cash cow coming up. You know what I'm saying? But they was going to have to wait a certain amount of years to wait everybody to die out. That way the resistance movement wouldn't be that strong. See what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And they done the exact same thing down there by Pickwick, Tennessee, because down past Pickwick, it basically merges into 3 different states. You got the Tennessee on one side, you got Mississippi on one side, and Alabama on one side. Well, what they done, once you go over past, before you ever get to the Mississippi state line, still on Tennessee state line, they opened that up about 10 years ago. That was at one time controlled just like LBL, and they turned it back into the public. Well, you know what that they've done with that property? They've turned it into a prestige piece of property. You got houses up there now, probably worth $1 million, $2 million up in there now, because people likes to live next to the water. It's calm, it's pleasant.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So yeah, we've already seen what TVA's already done in other areas. So it's just a matter of time before they're going to do this. Well, what they didn't like was that I planted a Native American site up here in the center of 285,000 acres. They didn't like that. Whenever I come back here, started fasting and praying in 2007, so the next thing you know, they come and desecrate my campsite, tear it all to pieces. I thought one of them was going to wind up sticking his fist down my mouth and beating the hell out of me. Probably would have if I'd have got a little bit ill with him, because here I am out in the woods. You got 2 agents on you. I mean, it's just going to be their word against yours. I mean, hell, they could have flew into me, and I wouldn't have had no freaking proof whatsoever. So it was only God that was taking care of me during that event. So they tore everything up, and they told me, they said, you're banned from LBL, you can't come back. So I wound up coming to Aurora, and if you go up here where the new highway is, and go down maybe a mile, and there's another road that goes to the left. That's the old road that used to go to Murray before they built that 4-lane.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I went on down.
What was that, 94?
Something like that. So anyways, I went on down maybe 3 or 4 miles and turned left, and the next thing you know, I found a campsite up there called Earth Daddies, and the people, you know, they was good. They had a hot and cold water and a shower and a bathroom, and they let me stay there for $2 a night, and I thought that was pretty decent. So I went ahead and got a spot for 30 days. Well, in the meantime, all this other stuff's still going on. Once more, who put me on the radar screen to begin with? My daddy.
Yeah.
My daddy did, because I guarantee you, if he never did make that telephone call, I could have come up here and done what I needed to do, and I'd have slipped under the radar, and wouldn't have nobody never seen or known that I was even up here. But because my own daddy called them up and basically put me on the radar, now they was watching me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they kicked me out. Well, in the meantime, I'm up here camping. So because I'm a religious man, I start making up a bunch of material that I paid for out of my own pocket. And I started from Grand Rivers, going up through Calvert City, and going all the way to Paducah, passing out Bible literature, and either putting it on cars or putting it in churches. There's like 100 freaking churches between here and Paducah on the back roads. And guess what I was greeted with whenever I got to Paducah, Kentucky? About 8 officers with guns. I was arrested, put into Paducah, Kentucky jail, asked, interrogated for over 2 hours. What did you mean whenever you was telling people that there was going to be electrical disturbances? I said, man, there's all kinds of ways that you can have electrical disturbances.
Yep.
I go, you can have solar flares. You can have tornadoes. The water can get too hot and too low in the Tennessee River to the point that they got to shut down their Heber freaking dams. And guess what happened that year? That's exactly what happened down in Huntsville, Alabama, or down in, I think it was Wilson Dam that had to shut down because the water got so low and got so hot. But guess what else happened a year and a half later?
What?
Was whenever that ice storm hit up here in 2009. And it desecrated about 80 different counties, and the governor had to put a state of emergency out because there were some of these freaking places that didn't have electricity for over a month.
Yep.
It was like 20 during the day and 10 degrees, maybe lower at night. Ice, 3.5 inches of ice. There was 2 big TV towers up towards the dam. All that ice, guess what it done to those towers? crinkled them. I'm talking about you drive around in spots and you think the tornado damage looked bad. This looked just as bad. Of course,
Wow.
the houses wasn't destroyed, but all the trees and all the power lines and everything. Oh yeah, it was bad. So I come up here in 2009. I feel sorry for them because the ice storm did hit. At the time, I was working in Clarksville, Tennessee, working for a deal there right in front of the Army base. I went ahead and put all my stuff up, took part of it back to my dad's house. This was in 2009. The event that I'm talking about that happened to me was in 2007. There was also another event that happened in 2007. Whenever they arrested me, they confiscated my truck, they impounded my truck, and they took me to Four Rivers Behavior Center and made me sit in front of a doctor for about 2 or 3 hours after waking her up at about 11 o'clock at night. And finally, when it was all said and done with, she said, Mr. Jackson, they have made a mistake with you. Somebody needs to let you go. You have not done nothing wrong. Well, now it's freaking 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. The Kentucky police officers don't know what to do with me, so they just take me back to Paducah and drop me off, and just let me saunter around in town, take a chance on getting robbed or whatever. Yeah. So I had to wait around till daylight, and I finally go to Post 1 to the state trooper's office. I go in there to get my automobile, and they wouldn't give me my automobile. I said, look, y'all didn't find nothing on me. There wasn't no charges. There wasn't no orders pertaining to a doctor. Y'all need to let me have my automobile. Well, about 2 or 3 hours later, guess what? They let me have my automobile. But the only way that I was going to get it was to shell out almost $200.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once I realized that my back was against the wall, there wasn't nothing I could do other than shell out the $200.
Yeah, that probably went in their pockets.
Sure, that went in some cop's pocket.
Yeah.
Sure it did. And here I am from Tennessee. I ain't from Kentucky. I don't have no roots here. I knew that I was outvoted. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So I go back to my campsite, right? I got 30 days. I'm still praying, fasting. God is still speaking to me, right? About 3 days later, I'm in my tent. I've done already changed into my night clothes. And the area that I was at was way back in the woods, and there wasn't but maybe 1 or 2 other people that was camping in that same site, in that same campsite. And they was like probably 300 or 400 yards away from me. And ordinarily at night, it was very still and quiet and peaceful, like it is right now, without the cars running up and down the road.
Oh, yeah.
But about 11 o'clock, I was almost fixing to go to sleep. And all of a sudden, I thought I was being invaded. Have you ever seen that movie where that UFO gets that little boy out of that little door? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Have you ever seen that movie? You ain't never seen that science fiction movie?
I haven't.
My little tent started glowing at 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
You know why? 2 state troopers, 2 deputies from this county, which their seat in this county is over in Murray, Kentucky, an FBI agent, 2 TBI agent, and a supervisor. There was like 7 automobiles in the middle of the freaking forest to the point that you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face unless you had a light. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And now I've got 7 automobiles out there with all these freaking mosquitoes eating me alive, standing out there, and they're questioning me, Mr. Jackson, do you have any intentions of blowing up the dam? This was after I'd already went through what I went through up there in Paducah about 3 or 4 days before that. Less than a week. So once I realized that, my God, these people are trying to destroy me, somebody's out to get me, I went ahead and left and went up into Colorado and stayed for a while and come back. And I'll be darned if I didn't have another rumble with the LBL law enforcement agency towards them ticketing me, and which they never did give in the ticket. But then that was in 2007, whenever that happened. And then in 2009, whenever I come up here, after the ice storm hit, while the ice storm was still basically affecting people's lives, I went to Grand Rivers, Kentucky. You know where Grand Rivers is?
Oh, yeah.
Up there by Patty's?
I ate there at Patty's.
Okay, I know all them people very well. I've known them for like 35, 40 years, the owner and the people that live there. Some of them, not all of them.
Was I sad when I learned about that place burning to the ground.
Yeah, it was very sad. But you know, he's already had another burn. You know, the Iron Kettle, and then
Well, see,
Patty's
I
burned.
used to
He's had
eat-
2 restaurants burn before he's built this one. And at one time, he used to own a nightclub down there in Paducah called Pickle. So I've known the man almost 40 years.
Yeah.
35.
Well, I used to eat at the Iron Kettle. I would make a special trip to go to the Iron Kettle
Wasn't
just
that
to eat.
Wasn't that the best food in you ever put in your mouth?
It was. But now they had that Mr. Bill's in Patty's, and I would have taken the Mr. Bill's and got rid of it and put the Iron Kettle in Patty's, and
I would too.
that's what I would have done.
But they didn't do it that way.
Nope.
I guess it was too much aggravation towards all that wrought iron and all that steel and stuff that they was using to cook with.
Yeah.
Of course, that was what was making the food taste good too.
Well, yeah. Yep. That food was excellent.
Those black pots and stuff.
Yep.
But anyways, I go up to Grand Rivers, and the first thing I do, I hook up with the chief, the fireman up there. The chief, his name was Troy Newsom, and man, he just loves me to death. He found out that I've quit my job and I come up here for free humanitarian work. Everybody was shut down. Didn't nobody have no electricity. I was getting in the truck with me and the chief, and we'd drive around and check, find out if people was over here, and we'd go to their house and say, well, y'all know we got an emergency station here to where if you need any food or water or anything, we're right here. Are you okay? You know, don't touch none of your electrical lines. You know, it's going to take a while for all this stuff to come back on. And I was helping him juice up generators and everything else, and I was actually sleeping and eating and living with the volunteer fire department in Grand Rivers, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Until about the 4th or 5th day, whenever they found out who I was, guess what they done?
What?
They made me leave town. In the middle of a disaster.
Yeah, that's not good.
In the middle of a catastrophe. In other words, they was holding my feet to the fire towards what had happened prior to that, a year and a half before that. And the thing about it was, I didn't threaten to harm any of their dams. All I was doing was trying to warn them and give them a heads up that God had showed me that the very thing that they was going through was going to occur.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they didn't take it that way. A matter of fact, I went to the other side of the county and started helping a church member, and I'll be darned if the Livingston County Sheriff Department didn't find out that I was down there helping that preacher down there load up generators and take care of stuff. And I'll be darned if they didn't run me completely out of the county the next day.
Yeah, that's not right.
No, it ain't right. And I tend to wonder, this tornado that come up through here, if that may have been some bad karma, because that tornado not only hit that area, but it also come up to Hillman's Ferry, and it hit part of Hillman's Ferry over there.
Yeah.
You know, coincidences may happen, but I don't believe in coincidences. Not if it's of God. I think it's preordained, and if it's preordained, that means that something happened that caused it to happen. Well, these people, I love them to death, but they got certain people up here that is paranoid about all this property that got stolen from all their citizens. And because of it, they're over paranoid, and that's what caused them to come down on me. Yeah, and they basically used the dam deal to put in another road, because about 2 years after that happened in my life, which was in 2007, they started construction, and they built that big freaking highway towards taking the main highway off of the dam, and now they've turned the dam into a spillway to where you can still drive on the dam at like 30 miles an hour, and you can still walk and fish on the dam, but you can't actually drive no 60 miles an hour on the dam. What do you do when there are a bunch of people is against you?
There isn't a whole lot you can do.
Especially whenever they're trying to bury you, because you know good and well, if they determine that you're a threat to society and you're going to try to blow up something, like Timothy McVeigh that blowed up that federal building.
Yeah.
over there in Oklahoma, if they determine you're a threat, you know what they'll do to you? They'll put your ass in a freaking mental institution, and that's where you'll remain for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be filling you full of Thorazine, and you'll be walking around mumbling to yourself, slobbering all over your shoes, not knowing daylight from dark, whether or not it's Monday, Tuesday, or Friday. That's what they'll do to you if they think that you're a threat. And that's exactly what they was trying to do to me. They was trying to ruin my life. For no reason. I was trying to help them.
Yep, they just took it all the wrong way.
Sure did. I've recorded this conversation. Is that all right?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'll probably put it out there to my Facebook or something. I don't know. You know, I've got a remarkable story to tell pertaining to how people has tried to criminalize me. And I don't know if you've ever really looked at it very clearly or not, but they've done the exact same thing to the Lord Jesus Christ. They tried to criminalize him because in actual reality, Jesus did not do nothing to deserve any type of punishment. If anything, Pontius Pilate and King Herod should have been rewarding him and patting him on the back for healing the sick and healing the blind and raising the dead. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That he should have been rewarded, not punished.
Yep.
They was trying to criminalize him. And of course, the only thing that they could criminalize him with was to say, well, this man committed blasphemy. Well, if you get to looking at what that actually means, it means, well, this man is fraudulent. This man is committing fraudulent activity because he's claiming to be this, and we know that he's not. And because of it, it's worthy for him to die.
Yeah.
That's the reason why King Herod washed his hands. He didn't want to be guilty of the charge because he knew that the charge didn't meet the crime because there was no crime.
Yep.
Jesus was trying to help them people. He was trying to conform them people. But guess what? Them people didn't want to be conformed, did they? A matter of fact, I've heard a lot of preachers say this, that the rabbis, the priests, the holy men at that time, they actually seen Jesus as an occupational threat. Have you ever heard that?
No.
Well, think about it.
I think I have.
Think about it. The priests, the rabbis, the holy men, they had their criteria of everybody basically looking up to them because they had a certain position in the church world at that time. And these people got to thinking, well, if they start listening to this Jesus character, they're going to start wanting to go to his church more so than they are mine. And the next thing you know, I'm not even going to have a job. So you see what I'm saying? They looked at him as being a professional threat, a career threat. I ain't through yet. Let me finish my story. I know you ain't never heard nothing like this before. Let me finish my story, okay?
Alrighty.
In 2010, I go down towards Georgia, Alabama. I come back up here in January 2010, and because I had left some messages on the recording at LBL, the federal phone, that the whole principle for me having access to this sword was to take on a battle, a duel with a physical Satan that I had already done met and heard about, and that I was going to try to kill this Arabic dark-complected person. Well, they arrest me, and they take me to the federal court in Paducah, Kentucky. Now I'm standing in front of a federal judge, and there's all kinds of bigwigs around me, right? Wearing suits and stuff. You got TV cameras in there, right? My public defender that they gave me was from Louisville, Kentucky. His name was Wildesworth. He comes down there at my jail cell. He goes, Mr. Jackson, I need to ask you something before we go any further with this. did you say on the telephone that you was going to kill or try to kill a darkly complected person that was Arabic descent? And I thought for a second, because I thought maybe it was a trick question or something, but I was just going to be as honest as I thought that I could. And I looked at him and I said, yes, I did. And he looks back at me, he said, well, you can't do that. That's premeditated murder. And if they can prove premeditated murder, even though you haven't murdered the person, they can get you for a Class E felony. Well, whenever he said that, it set me back, and I thought to myself, oh my God, what is going on here? He said, don't fret. He said, don't fret. He said, the judge has already done talked to me. He said, if you agree to go get a psychiatric evaluation done, and you pull through the psychic evaluation all right, he said, whenever you get back here, all the charges will be dismissed. He said, if you agree to that, we'll start the proceedings immediately towards you going and being studied. Well, of course, hell, I'm not a fool. Would have you went to court, or would have you went and got studied if it was you?
I'd go get studied.
That's what I done. I agreed to go get studied, and you know where they took me? To downtown Chicago. To MCC, a federal prison that was associated with mental health. Guess what happened after 6 months? Whenever I returned and I'm standing back in front of that same federal judge, the judge looks at me and he commends me. He says, Mr. Jackson, I have to commend you. He said, you passed every test with high colors. You cooperated with everybody. You didn't get into no kind of disturbances. He said, as far as I'm concerned, you are an A+ student.
Yeah.
So guess what? They had to drop all the charges. But they put me on 2 years probation. He said, as long as you stay away from LBL, don't contact them, don't email them, don't write them, don't even send them a smoke screen like the Indians used to do. He said, as long as you stay away from Mr. Jackson, after 2 years, you're good to go. Because the first thing he told me, he said, I can make your life very, very complicated. But because we already had disagreement, I'm going to stand firm with my agreement, and I'm not going to pursue a Class E felony on your life. So I walked, right? So in the meantime, I had some more problems going on with some other issues down in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and I had to hire an attorney down there towards fighting a case down there. And the day that the court date order was over with, because I was counting it down, buddy. Don't think that I wasn't. Week 2, week 1, day 4, day 3, day 2, day 1, all the way down to the hour. Because I knew that what these people had done to me was wrong. So I called them up. It was late at night. It was after 12 o'clock. The probation had already ended. And I told them, I said, what y'all done was wrong. I said, I'm sorry that there was a misunderstanding, but I guarantee you I'm going to let the people, the public, know what has occurred here up here in Land Between the Lakes. I hung the phone up, didn't say another word to nobody, and didn't call them back until about 3 months later. About 90 days later, I contacted the forest ranger, Mr. Hawkins, that works the forest up here. Now he's done already retired. I left him the exact same message. It was non-threatening, didn't threaten nobody. It was in apologetic form, and the only thing that I told them that I was going to report them. I was going to let the people know what they had done. Did you know less than 2 days later they put out 2 federal warrants for 2 telephone calls that in stalking in the first degree that had initiation of 1 to 5 years each call, each charge? In other words, they went all the way to Oklahoma and picked me up and drug me back up here to LBL, and now I'm in Cadiz, Kentucky, standing in front of a state judge called Judge Woodall. Okay? Mm-hmm. And guess what Judge Woodall ordered? He ordered for another psychiatric evaluation to be done. This makes 3 psychiatric evaluations that I've went through over Land Between the Lakes, the very people that's just right across the river over here, okay? So they take me to LaGrange, Kentucky, and the first thing they do on day one, the doctor comes up to me. He says, "Man, I think you're delusional. I think you're delirious, and I think there's something wrong with you. And I'm going to order for this drug for you to be put on this drug." I looked at the guy and said, "Doctor," I said, "they grabbed me up while I was working. I was making $2,000 a week working on automobiles. I still got Bondo dust all over my clothes. I said, you need to leave me alone and let me go because I didn't threaten nobody and I didn't violate no judge." He said, "Well, it don't matter." He said, "You're going to take this medication." I said, "I'll be damned if I am." He said, "What did you say?" I said, "I ain't going to take your medication." He said, "You give me just about 72 hours. Sure enough, he gets on the phone. He comes back with a stack of paperwork about that thick. Judge Woodall done signed off on it in Trigg County. Make him take the medication. If he don't take it voluntarily, tie him to the bed and poke it up his ass, but he will take this medication. Well, guess what this medication done to me? You're looking at it, obesity.
Yep.
The medication is Risperdal that causes obesity and breast enhancement, and the company that manufactured the medication has done been sued an endless amount of times. Even though I wasn't on the medication but about 3 months, it done something to my thyroid. It done something to my breakdown pertaining to my DNA, and because of it, I went from 240 to 340 pounds in less than 6 weeks. And I still can't shake the weight. Now I got diabetes on account of it. But whenever I talk to an attorney, they tell me, well, because it was a judge that ordered it, you can't sue them. You can't sue the judge, and you can't sue the manufacturer that manufactured the drug, even though all these other people that's been on the drug that wound up getting the same type of results towards obesity, they wound up suing the manufacturer. Kind of like those Cotton Ivies that company got sued for billions of dollars because it was causing people to OD. It was a pain medication that people was abusing. They got sued for I guess billions. I think it caused the whole company to go bankrupt. That was all over the news about 2 or 3 years ago. Well, if I can't sue the manufacturer that manufactured that Risperdal drug, and if I can't come after the judge, where does that put me, sir?
Basically, nowhere except right where you're at.
And that's right. That's proper in the eyes of the court.
No, shouldn't be.
Here I have fell off a 4-story building whenever I was 19 years old, hanging still before I went over into the body shop career, and I broke both my legs in about 25 pieces apiece. I crushed both ankles. Look at my legs, how they're swollen up down here. I crushed 3 vertebrae in my back, ruptured 2 discs, broke both arms, laid in the hospital 6 weeks, 3 days, flat on my back at the age of 19 in 1979 in Jackson, Tennessee. Fell off A.L. Smith building in Milan.
Wow.
So now I've got an injury on top of an injury that adds to the injury, and now I got diabetes. So now what do? I do just exactly what I'm doing right now. I document the conversation. I hope and pray to God that somebody will think enough of me one day that they'll hear my story and they'll try to move it or document it or maybe make a book out of it or a movie about it or whatever, that my story will be told one day to help to exonerate that in which what has been done here, because they have basically tried to ruin my freaking life. The same way that they basically ruined Jesus Christ's life. They did ruin Jesus Christ's physical life by killing him, but they didn't ruin his ministry, and they didn't kill him spiritually, because he did come back the way that he promised he was going to come back on the 3rd day. So they didn't kill Jesus now, did they? They killed his body, but they didn't kill his ministry. They didn't kill his purpose. And if you think about it, that was the whole purpose that they wanted to come after Christ, was because they didn't want Jesus to fulfill his purpose. Yeah. A matter of fact, if you get to looking at it, Jesus had a warrant for his own personal death before he ever got out of the womb good. King Herod done already ordered for every child in that city to be beheaded, and they claimed they done killed about 5,000 kids trying to get a hold of Jesus. So why was they wanting to stop Jesus for? Why did they want to stop Jesus? Jesus hadn't done nothing to nobody. Matter of fact, Jesus hadn't even been born hardly good. Why did they want to stop Jesus? Because they didn't want him to fulfill his purpose. They didn't want him to fulfill his promise. So they've done the same thing to me. They've come at me and they've tried to destroy me. So the only thing that I can do at this point in time is like I'm doing right now, towards talking to people about my story and telling people how that these people up here with the federal forestry department and it went from a federal forest department to a federal judge to a federal judge to a local judge pertaining to a state judge, that basically these people worked me over. And I don't know that I'll ever recover from the damages that they have done, because I mean, you can see how my ankles have swelled and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'll ever fully recover from this.
Well, you may not.
Go from 240 to 340 pounds in 6 weeks? Huh?
Yeah, that is a lot of extra weight.
And if the truth be known, they probably knew it was going to happen. That was the reason why they done it, according to my son. I got a son down there at Memphis. He's 42. He said, Dad, they probably done it intentionally, that this was the only way that they could have stopped you. In other words, they was going to stop you medically. They was going to use medical, and if you get to looking at the psychiatric ward, whenever it first began back in the 12th and 13th century, that was all about satanic stuff towards controlling people's minds and controlling people's body by chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look today, what does the psychiatric community do? They over medicate people. That makes them worse.
Yeah.
Or they don't medicate them. Or whenever some idiot does like they done down there in Texas, luckily that guy got killed down there in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I think he killed himself. But ordinarily, like the deal in Buffalo, New York, whenever an idiot like that does something like that, first thing a lawyer and a doctor does, oh, insanity plea.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And the next thing you know, them people don't get what they rightfully deserve, which is death.
Yep.
I think they should get one appeal. They have the right to go to court, and they have the right to get just one appeal. But if you know without a shadow of a doubt that that person committed that act, I think one appeal and one appeal only is all they should get. And the reason why I say that, we had an incident that happened up there in Weakley County that was similar, that the guy took out vengeance on this little 12-year-old girl, raped her, killed her, cut her head off. Matter of fact, he told her he was fixing to kill her, and she looked at him and said, well, God will forgive you. And he basically told the courts that he done it. You know how many years it took to finally execute that guy? 20 years of appeals. 20 years laying on TV, showers, cots, medical problems.
Yep.
And they knew that he done it. And he knew that he'd confessed that he done it. And his attorney still went through 20 years of appeal. To me, sir, I appreciate you letting me tell my story about LBL. To me, a lawyer or a judge that wants to do that with somebody, that knowing that they're guilty of that charge, whenever that person gets executed, the same thing ought to happen to the attorney and the judge. For standing in that corner towards trying to represent evil, trying to give evil a green light towards saying, well, yeah, we done him, we're going to punish him, but we ain't going to punish him the right way. We're just going to feed him, take care of him, bathe him, let him watch HBO, and you know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. Because believe it or not, in a lot of those people's livelihoods that's in jail, they actually like being in jail. That's their life.
Well, just like a lot of them people that get out and they go do something stupid again so they can get back in jail because that's what they're used to.
That's right. That's what they're used to. That's the only life that they've ever had. And it sounds kind of senseless, but it's the truth.
Yep.
I don't know who you are. I'm glad that you let me talk to you. Good luck in your endeavors.
All right. Okay? Thank you. Well,
the only advice that I can give you is that whenever you step foot across that bridge, you watch your P's and Q's. If the speed limit's 45, you better do 46 or 44. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
In other words, you watch your P's and Q's over there, because I'm telling you, those people can hurt you. You may not think that a Forest Service, a National Forest Service guy can hurt you that way, but enough of them get in behind you or wanting to put you down, I guarantee you they can run you. Matter of fact, the last time that they went to Oklahoma and picked me up, the attorney that they gave me, her name was, well, that's not important. Her husband was a judge, a juvenile judge that worked in Christian County, which is the next county over, Hopkinsville. And she tried to tell him, hey, what y'all are doing is wrong. This man made 2 telephone calls that was non-threatening. The order had already ended pertaining to the judgment, the judge's order. He didn't threaten nobody. He made the 2 telephone calls within a span of 90 days, so you can't really say it was telephone harassment. You had telephone call number 1, and then telephone call number 2 that was in the span of 3 months. You can't deem that as being harassment.
Nope.
But still, I wound up losing almost a year of my life and getting this right here on me. Did you know, if I didn't know that they was already going to do something, that God already done told me, towards whispering in my little ear, that something like that was going to happen, and I already made an agreement with another body man that I only knew for about 6 months. I said, Billy, I think something's going to go down. And I said, if it does, I said, will you make a promise to me? He said, what's that? I said, well, I just got through renting out a 3-bedroom house. It cost me about $2,400, $750 a month. And you got to pay a month before and a month after and a month during. You got to basically come up for 3 months just to rent that house for no problem, because the tenants have abused the renting system. So I rented out a 3-bedroom house and hadn't had that but maybe a week at the very most. I said, Billy, will you make me a promise that something does happen? Will you make sure that my truck and my tools and my stuff is taken care of? Well, I'll be darned if less than 3 days later, it happened. And as they was trying to arrest me, I reached into my pocket and I grabbed my keys and I throwed them against the floor, and I said, Billy, remember your promise. Sure enough, whenever they loaded me up, I had to stay no longer. If they didn't come and get me in 10 days, they was going to let me go in Oklahoma, because by law they don't have to hold you but 10 days, and if they don't bring a driver up to get you, they can let you go. Well, they had a driver up there on the 8th day, and they took me back to Kentucky. In the meantime, Billy, auto body technician, he got my truck, my trailer, he got all my tools, he got what stuff that I put in the house, which wasn't a whole lot but a little, and he put that in behind his house, and that's where it remained for 3 months until I got out on bond and I come back and got it. Now, whenever you meet somebody in a short period of time and they do something like that for you, I'm indebted to him for the rest of my life. You know what I'm saying? Because I could have not only lost my tools, which was about $40,000, I could have lost a $40,000 truck, my trailer, and most importantly, I would have lost all my records to be able to prove my case. Because I've kept all my records towards every time that I've had an event happen in my life. I've always kept all the records. And so I can validate my case. That means a lot. Whenever you can validate what you're talking about. So I'll always be indebted to that man for what he done. Man, good luck to you on your sale. Because you told me about this, I don't know for sure if I'm going to go to Tennessee or not. Did you say that what highway was it, 641?
68.
68 goes up towards Middle Kentucky, don't it?
Yes. Yeah.
But it was also another road, wasn't it? Wasn't it 2 roads?
The 400-mile sale is on Highway 68 through this area. I don't know what it is through Louisville or any of them other places. I don't know if it's the same 68 or not.
And this is 68 here, right?
Yes.
So I don't think I'm going to go to Tennessee tonight. I'm just trying to put 2 and 2 together, because I like stopping at these places, and occasionally I'll find a good smoking good deal, and I'll be able to buy something pennies on the dollar, something that you know good and well if you was to try to buy it somewhere else, it'd probably cost you 3 or 4 or 5 times that much.
Oh yeah.
That's the benefit of doing like I'm doing right here.
Mm-hmm.
A matter of fact, if you don't mind, I'd like to get my flashlight and just kind of gaze at what you got real quick. It won't take me maybe 2 minutes.
I don't have a whole lot left.
Oh, really? You done just about sold everything?
Just about, yeah.
Okay, that's still recording now. Just want to let you know it's still recording. Man, I sure do wish I could have got a hold of that backpack that you sold for $50.
It was a nice one.
The green lights. Where'd you get those at?
Oh, I got them out of my storage shed a long time ago. But everything on these tables, all 3 of them, except the extension cord, everything else is 25 cents.
25 cents.
Yeah. And then for the 2 boxes, and the green one's got a tray in it. Those are $5 for the pair of them. I sell everything inexpensive.
What is that return?
That, the bug shield come off my 94 Dodge Caravan.
Okay.
And then the other pieces are the window pieces, but I got you put them on.
I got you. I'm gonna go ahead and take these green lights off your hand if you don't mind.
Sure. There's what, 4 of them there?
Mm-hmm. Take $1.
Yep.
You don't know if they'll work or not.
Oh yeah, I know they work.
Buy them as is.
No, I can plug them into that thing right there.
Really?
Yeah, hook them up to my inverter. I can show you every one of them that work.
Here's a buckaroo. And how many blue lights you got?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I can plug every one of them into this.
What light is it? Is that a blue light or is that a?
Yeah, they're blue.
Is that blue?
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5. Let me have all 5 of them per dollar.
Yep.
There you go. Let's see, we just made a sale, man. Yep. You got a sack or something I put them in?
Sure. But I would like to hook them up and make sure that they all work right now.
Okay. I appreciate that. Them door handles right there, you got the locks with them and everything?
No, those came out of my sister's house over in Illinois.
I got you. Hey, listen, just give me a sack. I'm going to take your word at it that they work, and if they don't work, don't worry about it. Just sack them up for me if you don't mind. I'm kind of in a hurry. It's already 10 minutes to 11. Yeah, just go ahead and put them in that sack right there. And if they work, they work, and if they don't, they don't. I mean, for that kind of price, I mean, what do you expect? If just 1 or 2 of them work, I got a deal. Because them are about $7 or $8. What do they call those kind of lights?
Floodlights.
Floodlights, yeah.
Colored floodlights.
Yeah. They're not energy affected light.
No. They're just regular green floodlights.
Right. What'd you have them for?
I got them out of my storage shed.
I mean, what did you actually use them for? Keep them drawing a lot of bugs or something?
Yeah. I just like the color of them green.
Right. Well, if you use a different color other than white, ordinarily it won't draw the bugs as bad. I know we used to use the yellow lights when I was a kid growing up, and them yellow lights don't draw the bugs as bad.
Well, it is nice out here.
It's been good meeting you. Take care of yourself.
Good meeting you. And you take care too.
And thank you for letting me tell my story.
You're welcome.
That's the only way that I know to clear the air on all this, because whenever you have a group of people that is that powerful, that is after you like that, you know, naturally the public is going to take their word before they are somebody like me and you, because of the position that they're in.
Yep.
So we're already in a bad position toward trying to defend ourselves against people like that.